for joining me for the Plant Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Howie Jacobson. So this podcast, coming to you late in the week, on Good Friday actually, is a conversation that I have been having with my buddy Josh LaJaunie for the past 2 weeks. Last week, we were together in New Orleans and Thibodaux, and he took me on a driving tour of down the Bayou, the land where basically he was raised, where he grew up hunting and fishing and being social and communal and cooking and eating and drinking and all that stuff. And the land's disappearing for various reasons related to climate change globally and specifically some of the ecology and geography of down the Bayou. The place that he loves and has called home for his whole life is literally underwater. And he gave me a long tour on Monday. We drove down there and he showed me all this stuff. And I kind of wanted to, document it for the world. And so we did that in our conversation today. But the week before that, we were together leading a couple of retreats, one for health coaches and one for folks who just want to, improve their lives, be happier and eat better, move better, and just be more okay with themselves, more in touch with what they actually need. And so we talked about what that was like as well. It's always great for me to catch up with Josh, and since I have gotten 2 weeks worth and you haven't, I wanted to share him with you. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation. Josh LaJaunie, welcome back.
What's up, brother?
Yeah, first of all, happy birthday.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
You got a
Yeah,
beautiful
thank you very
shout
much.
out
It was a
from
special day.
I saw on Instagram you got a beautiful shout out from Black Men Run and Black Men Run NOLA. It made me cry.
Yeah, yeah, that was unexpected, right?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate it. I mean, I know yeah, it's pretty powerful. Felt good.
Yeah. So I'm here just to catch up. We haven't recorded something in a while, or actually we did record something that we didn't publish a couple months ago.
Yeah,
But you and I
very
just spent,
anger and worry filled.
yeah. Sometimes these are just therapy sessions, and we're both like, okay, no one else needs to hear this.
Exactly.
Probably would have been the highest rated episode ever, but.
Oh yeah, because people want to see gore and they love tragedy and train wrecks and people crying, snot bubbles.
Yeah, maybe I should have the Snot Bubble podcast.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, lots been going on. You and I have spent the better part of 2 weeks together, and
Yeah, I miss you, bro. It feels weird without Howie every single day.
I know, it's funny how quickly we got into that routine after 2 years of not seeing each other at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's beautiful.
yeah. So there's a bunch of things I'd love to talk to you about. One is on Monday, today's Friday, on Monday, you took me on a 5 or 6 hour driving tour of down the Bayou. And I took a bunch of like bad photos with my ridiculously old iPhone. Some of which I could share. Most of them I like was going through them with Mia and showing her on the computer, and she's like, "Well, and what's that?" And what? So mostly it's Josh's cracked windshield.
Exactly.
But over there in that corner, I think you can see rubble.
Right.
But it was so powerful, the tour. First of all, I'd love for you to just kind of talk about down the Bayou and what's going on and what that means, and if there's anything to be learned from it or anything actionable that listeners can be thinking about or even doing. So
There's an analogy actually that pops to mind for me when I was up at your house when we were, a couple weeks ago, and I was petting that steer right in that field. He had come to the fence and he was really nice to me, and it felt right, to really love him and pet him and then try and give him as much positive energy as I could, because he probably doesn't get a lot of that from animals that look like me. And I kept thinking, like, what could I tell this steer? I know what his life is. I know what's about to happen. And it's just like enjoy, right? I think the first action step is to recognize and realize that um, losing a big part of our south of I-10 state, a big part of what the flavor of Louisiana really is, losing a big part of that landmass is inevitable.
Mm,
It's not something that we're going to arrest and reverse.
right. So maybe go into, like, before we get into that, like, what are we
Yeah,
talking
sure.
about for people who
Just
don't
the
know? Like,
coastal
I didn't know.
erosion. Yeah, yeah. Coastal erosion in Louisiana, where I'm from. Like, so Louisiana is this big boot-shaped state. Well, on the soles of the boot is where I'm from. I'm from the sole of the boot, down on the bottom of the boot. That's where I'm from. I'm from where the Gulf touches our state. And we don't have like long, linear, sandy beaches and a clearly defined coastline like you see in most coastal areas where whether it's rocky or beachy or whatever. What we have is thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of sort of semi land, semi water, and it kind of permeates back and forth. These estuaries, these in between zones that we call marshlands. It's not really land. You're not gonna make a road or build a hotel on it, but it's there. And we had these islands out there that were called cheniers. They were protection islands, And over the years, whether it's Last Island or Timbalier Island or Grand Isle now is shrinking. Um, we've lost all of those over the years, and it's like a buffer zone for that really gooey, soft marsh closer inland. And all of those things have helped us upland, up the bayou, weather storms for years, for generations. Storm surge is arrested by a lot of that sort of in between marshy land down there, and so it's beneficial to us in that regard. It's beneficial to our tourism and the hunting and fishing that goes on in those areas. The and the fact is that part of Louisiana is disappearing. Like it's literally leaving and not coming back. And it's where I'm from. Like I'm from up the bayou, but we spent all of our recreational hours going down the bayou to those estuaries, to those marshes, and so many of my beautiful sunsets and sunrises are in those places with people I love. And they're disappearing. And open water is beautiful too, but when you see open water and you know that used to be called Bird Island, or that used to be called Last Island. This Raccoon Island used to just be the westernmost point of what was this big long island called Ile de Neer, Last Island. And so I know that, and what's weird is it's hard to convey. It's so powerful to me, and it means so much, and it's my homeland. But to really like get people to appreciate it, it takes satellites, time lapse photography to really kind of give someone an appreciation that otherwise would take a lifetime of 40 years of living and watching and seeing areas turn from land ish to just open water. And then there's all sorts of ramifications from that, and then there's all sorts of things that expedite that process and make it happen faster. And um and it's just a real frustrating conundrum as a person from here, which is a lot of why I resonate with a lot of Tab Benoit's music. There's blues, right? And his blues is often about us losing our homeland.
Right.
It's going away.
Yeah. And so I've understood it from, let's say, an economic perspective and a geological perspective. What I didn't understand until you took me on that tour is that, it's a difference between, well, a bunch of people died and your mom died, right? Like
Right.
those are two very different relationships to a thing that's going on. And you'd stop and you'd point out like that water there, that's where we used to have a camp. Right. Like for you to say, this is the land that birthed me and it's gone. Like that was first of all, it was hard for me because I'm looking at it as a tourist and it didn't look that special to me. Right.
It's gross. It smells like marsh smells bad. The bugs are terrible. It's very inhospitable. It's a very rough terrain to exist in, but our people have for generations, and we love it now, you know?
Yeah. I mean, to be able to sit there and to sort of realize like, I am with you in your pain, but I'm not understanding. Like it's the same as if someone you loved died whom I didn't know. Like all I can do is empathize with you, but I can't feel the same things you're feeling. And it was sad for me to be to want to support you, to be next to you on this drive, and to see things that I knew I could not see through your eyes. And I'm wondering maybe if you could just like tell some stories. Like, I can cry at a funeral, a person I don't know, when I hear the stories of them. Like, what does this land mean to you?
So there's a whole bunch of islands. Like I posted an Instagram post a couple of days ago about um, it was like time lapse satellite footage of a series of little barrier islands sort of just melting into, like, it looked like sugar melting into coffee or something.
Hmm.
And those islands specifically are are places that my Bam Bam took me and my little brother. Those are places where, maybe we weren't technically supposed to, but we would get off and go walk through all of the birds on Bird Island, and we learned how they would like fake an injury and to just get you away from their nest. All these really nuanced and cool things about nature. We would go walk the shores of those little places on the backside in the bays and stuff where they still had sandy bottoms. We would rig up a lantern so we could see, and we'd be maybe walking in, calf deep water looking for flounder, and we would gig flounder. And to think that those places now, those literal spots now just don't exist anymore. And they never gonna. It's not gonna happen. The will isn't there to go, oh, we need to rebuild this. We need to reroute the billions of dollars made in the industries that have helped make this happen to rebuilding this. That's never gonna happen. It's not happening. So it's about coming to that realization, realizing what's left that's still really beautiful, and trying to hold on to the memories, trying to get people to go see it before it's gone. Go see it before it's gone, because Grand Isle is awesome. Ile de Jean Charles is awesome. You should go and see it before it disappears. Go ride to Pontchartrain and see what a fishing community looks like before it goes away. And it's just a boat launch with open water. And it's just kind of sad, all of those, you think about what it must have used to look like when you see all of the dead deciduous trees in the marsh. You're like, wow. You think about what kind of land is necessary for that kind of tree to take root and grow, and to see them just dead because of saltwater intrusion. It portends a really sad ending for the place I grew up playing.
Yeah, it looked like, if anyone's read the Dr. Seuss children's book, The Lorax, at the end, where there's just sort of sticks and dead stumps.
Right.
Like these, these were like mighty live oaks, and sticks right? Like sticks that somebody stuck in the ground from far away.
Hmm.
Um, and you look at it like it doesn't compute that that used to be forested or at least heavily covered.
Had cows on it. It was field. It was pasture. You know. And now you couldn't walk on it without sinking up to your asshole. It's just mud marsh mud and grass.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you talk about the childhood connection to it, like I did not grow up in nature, right? I grew up in the suburbs, so
Hmm.
we could go walk at South Mountain Park, or like I could go in the backyard and look at earthworms, but it was always mediated through
Hmm.
culture, through things that were human made. I think there's something special that you and Dustin got from that
Hmm.
that wasn't like you go to Disneyland, you get an experience and it's a very predictable experience, and it's sort of
Hmm.
culture consumer and conformist. What you got from being part of an ecosystem or being intimately connected to an ecosystem that had birds that would fake injuries, and like it feels like what it did was it helped you see that you were part of something bigger than a human society. You talked about with that
Yeah.
steer that you were being nice to, that you referred to yourself as an animal, as an animal, right? That he hadn't seen an animal who looks like you be nice to him. And I think there's something incalculable that's lost when we don't, as children, have the opportunity to simply be a humble part of nature rather than its master or destroyer.
Right. And I've seen real time what being its master and destroyer looks like. I've killed animals with my bare hands and heard them scream their last breath. And because of me doing it, I've done it several times. I know I have that visceral connection to what death looks like. You know, I have that visceral connection to to the stars and being able to be so far away from city light that you can see just trillions of stars. You can see the Milky Way. We would lay on Timberlake Island and just so far away from any light when we would kill the generator. It was like a glitter box. It was unbelievable what the sky looked like. And it's beautiful and full circle to me that those things are drawing me now, like into the simple parts of nature, into the bayou that I've been, next to my whole life, looking at flowers more deeply, looking just trying to appreciate what's left, trying to appreciate right now, and not get too caught up in what's coming, how it got there, what can I do to help arrest it and change it and turn it and twist it, and what's my fiduciary responsibility as a person who has helped it get this way for so many years. Like all of those worries and those like crises inside your brain. If nature always offers the opportunity for you to get back in your body, which is another thing we spent so much time talking about that week at your house. Nature gives you no choice. You have to get back in your body. You have to cross the creek. You have to jump the little rock. You have to step up and over the tree that's fallen and smell and hear the rattlesnake or smell the poo to avoid it or whatever. You have to get in your body. And to have had that foundation laid accidentally by my grandfather, who just wanted to get the hell out of Dodge and let his hair down and have a few whiskey drinks and not have anybody bother him, to be leaning on what I learned back then now is beautiful. But there is a sadness to it because you know, I have seen the melting of that area, for lack of a better word,
Right. And as
that
you say,
specific area.
there's no conceivable way to reverse that, right? So you're saying your
Yeah.
goodbyes, right?
Yeah, yeah, because there's individual efforts, and they've proven that you can dredge and you can make some spots, but it's a lot of spot fixing. There's just not a lot of will to do something like that in mass. It's really a lot of effort on display type uh projects, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
But and so where I'm going with this is that you are in the vanguard. And most, like for me, I haven't experienced this. Like for me, climate change is fire ants in my garden where there didn't used to be,
Hmm.
unpredictable blueberry harvesting, where you look back from last year and it's like you have no idea when they're going to come into bud. It's longer allergy seasons that are more severe, but it's incremental. And if I didn't have
Hmm.
Facebook to remind me of the last blueberry harvest, I might not even notice. But it's happening, and you're in the vanguard of like you're experiencing this before the rest of us. So we might not be able to save Grand Isle and Ile de Jean Charles, but there's a lot of other places on the world that are going to follow, and they may not disappear underwater, but they're going to be changed to the point where they're unrecognizable, and they're not going to be able to sustain the life they're sustaining now, which is I think like what we need to hear from you. Like there are there are things we can do right now
Hmm.
if we want to save the rest of the ecosystems on the planet that nourish us physically and spiritually.
Or even if you just very simply, like myself, don't want to participate in being part of the problem that's been identified by decades of science. And so I'm just going to eject myself from being as much a part. I'm still driving a truck, I'm still burning petroleum, I'm still doing things that aren't helpful. But everywhere that I can, um, I want to make changes
Hmm.
to be better, to not be part of the problem as much. Now that I'm aware that I was.
So what are the causes specifically of the loss of all that marshland?
I'm not an expert, but I do like just generally speaking. I think the threat is just from basically media consumption knowledge of climate change. Um, the threat to us specifically is, of course, rising sea levels because we're already like we're like right here when it comes to sea level right now. We the tide affects whether or not the water's going to be over the dock or not, depending on where you are. So that's a big deal. We're not playing with a lot of freeboard, as you would say on a boat. Um, Kind of tight, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that doesn't help is all of that squishy, soft part of the marsh, probably decades before they realized it was such a bad idea, has been chopped up, crossed up, chopped up with with um, petroleum pipe, whether pipeline canals or access canals or whatever. Um, and that has just physically, if you just look at a satellite view of the marsh around there, it really helps the water get in and bifurcate the big patches of marshland. And you can see it demonstrably help the marsh dissipate. The other thing is, as just like Hurricane Ida, just this past summer was the most destructive and worst hurricane to ever hit Louisiana coast in history, right? That threatening to be a more normal occurrence is scary as shit because that was not fun.
Hmm.
That was a lot. And, a more tangential thing that's happening to us up the bayou, right? And in our specific topography between Lafourche and Mississippi, the Bayou Lafourche and the Mississippi River, we have this big giant patch of swamp. that all has to be drained out through by desalments, right? And so the more that we have sea level rise, the more that hurricanes can, which it by desalments essentially empties into a lake that is connected out to the Gulf, right?
That's
So the
Lake
more that
Lake
we
des
have sea level
Allemands?
rise, it's no, it's Lake Salvador
Lake
out into the
Salvador.
Gulf, right?
Okay.
Lake des Allemands the other way, right? And so, um, not only is sea level rise an issue, but with storms being more and more powerful, it's an issue. Blowing a south wind up into that mouth of that bayou, then nobody up and down that lives in the swamplands between the Mississippi River and Bayou Lafourche, nobody that lives in there is going to be able to effectively drain their backwater swamps that everybody's pumping into. So we wind up with water stacked up on top of us, and whoever's got the newest pump stations and the newest levees wind up the least harmed, but it's not really their fault, but it winds up a lot of people fighting, neighbors fighting, and it's causing a lot of turmoil up the bayou where I live. And it's just it doesn't look good going forward, because we're having more and more of these high water events, and the most powerful hurricane ever just hit us. And we've had some near misses. I mean, just the fact that Katrina just jogged over a little, Katrina could have really wiped us out too. But we got the north wind off of Katrina, which blows water out. You see, when you get the south and it pushes the water up into the coast, that storm surge on that side is just really bad. And when you don't have the cheniers and you don't have the marshes to absorb that water swell gets deeper and deeper up into the swamp. And that's where we're trying to pump to, and we can't. And our roads go under, and our houses go under, and property like Bayou Buff and during Ida never flooded. In 60 years, people have been living back there, and it never flooded. For Ida, it did. The swamps overtook the levees because and it's just a compounding, multifaceted problem that I don't really see like us getting traction on a solution, and we got to find different reasons to even do anything about it. And that's why I see it as me trying to pull myself out of the participation realm of that system as much as possible, whether it's eating meat, traveling less, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, down there, what's in your face is the petroleum industry. Right.
Yes.
Because I mean, we were looking at some of the poorest places on the planet, or at least in the Western Hemisphere, that but the money that comes in from petroleum actually raises a lot of people not only out of poverty, but into very comfortable upper middle class lives, right? People making $100,000, $200,000, $250,000 a year, not even working
with a GED.
With what?
Right.
With a GED.
With a GED, right? If you can weld.
Right. So it's blasphemous where you are to talk about the oil industry in anything other than glowing, thankful terms.
Correct. Correct. And that's a real big part of why I don't see a solution, because these people need these jobs. I don't know how we get around that. And that's just the facts. And I love these people. They're family, they're friends, they're people I've known my whole life. And if all of a sudden we said, hey, no more oil tomorrow, it would be mayhem. Suicides, murders, it would be mayhem. Like, it would be mayhem. And I don't know what to do about it. So I got to try to find ways to be happy. And find some sort of pocket of positivity to exist in.
It reminds me. I mean, it's almost like once a thing is done, we can look at it. You and I can look at it, and my audience can look at it and say, "Well, that's a bad thing. Let's undo it." And undoing it would be unbelievably irresponsible. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a big business consultant, and he's helping one of the biggest companies in the world get out of Russia. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, if you're looking at the news, there's been a lot of companies, Western companies, have just left Russia. Some are still there, and they're getting hammered, right, in the popular press. Like you see signs, Nestle get out, like boycotting Nestle because they're not out of Russia yet. And my friend was describing like what is going into getting this big company out of Russia. He said, like, first of all, how do you get the expats out? There's no planes. So you've got to get all the expats, all the Europeans and Westerners out safely. You can't just say, okay, we're done because we're on the moral high ground. Then you've got people who worked for you, who are Russians, who've been there, part of your team, part of your family for years or decades. And do you just abandon them, or do you try to take care of them in some way? If the government in Russia feels like they are Western supporters, they might be disappeared. They might be sent to jail, right? So, and what do you do about your, billions of dollars in hard assets, brick and mortar assets on the ground that are just someone else is going to take them and, steal from you for the benefit of Russia? Like, he was making me understand this is far more complicated than just taking a popular public stance. And right to say, okay, no more oil. Like, oh God, I hate the oil industry. We should just shut it all down. Is not a responsible way forward either.
No, and the lack of, and the lack of a desire to explore the nuances in that really creates division. It's really an either or thing. Nobody wants to talk about the toxic capitalist reasons that oil is exploiting us, right? Or that that big petroleum is sucking the juice out of Louisiana and disproportionately taking more than it leaves.
Want to talk about them?
Even,
help connect some dots for folks.
Well, what I mean is just I don't want to come off like a know-it-all because I don't know it all, but I do know that just this general ethos associated with everything that I've ever learned about business is, you got to break a few eggs. All of these old adages to make an omelet. The omelet being increase shareholder wealth. And there's really no nuance to that I just had an undergrad, but there's no nuance to that in the business education I got. It's very clear. And so with that, there's a lot that's okay. If it's not technically illegal, then it's okay. And that's kind of what I mean by the way, if you want to talk about Deepwater Horizon, you want to talk about how BP got there. I just saw a documentary on how they grew so fast, buying up Amoco and these other companies, and you get really top heavy, and you present as if you're ready to benefit from economies of scale, but you logistically can't handle the scale you're trying to operate at, and these major terrible things happen. Human life is lost. I have friends who've been on barges that blew up because trying to save money so it can get to the bottom line so we can increase shareholder wealth. And human lives are used as pawns. But it's cool because you get $100,000, payout from the oil company, or somebody gets, some money. And like that's what I mean. It's a cost benefit analysis as to whether or not we kill Louisianans extracting oil.
Right.
And right now, it's cool. It's all right. Whether we kill them offshore or slowly through chronic disease or depression or being broke all the time or whatever.
Yeah. And I think if we go back, if we could rewind the clock and go back before there is a significant petroleum presence in Louisiana, and do a referendum and say, here's the deal. You guys will get $150,000 a year with your GED. You'll be able to buy a boat. You'll be able to work 6 weeks off, 6 weeks on. You'll be able to have a nice house. And here's the cost, right? Certain percentage of you are going to die on oil rigs. A certain percentage of you are going to get these diseases. Your land is going to go away. There are people in Texas and Saudi Arabia who are going to become billionaires.
Fucking obscene, right? Obscene wealth.
And you're going to get, I love this expression that you came up with, like peanut dust, right? Because we talked about the CEO getting peanuts compared to the actual shareholders, the owners of the company, and the employees getting peanut dust, right?
Right, exactly.
Which, at this point, you can't, it's hard to give up, but it's hard to imagine that somebody rational would have made that choice had they been able to see the unforeseen future.
Absolutely. It's a generational sort of boiled frog thing, and so many of this is these people. I mean, I'm following my dad right into the same field, the same company. A lot of it is like that. So it's bigger than even a job. It's a family lineage. It's, I got, my dad's got a certain last name, and I took it, and I'm taking the ball and running with it. I totally understand that dynamic. That's what further makes me feel like there's not going to be a lot done about it. It's so entrenched. It's almost, I would say, metastasized in our culture.
All right. Now you didn't, when you were in business school or in school for business, getting your degree, you bought into all that stuff, right? It was gospel.
Absolutely.
So you didn't shift your views by starting out to read, Capital by Thomas Piketty or The Nation, right? Young Socialist of America or anything. You shifted based on movement and food. Right. That was the first. One part of climate change is petroleum industry, transportation, energy, all that. But we know, and my listeners know, there's a huge part that has to do with agriculture. So how can you draw the line from you changing the way you treated your body to becoming an advocate for the planet?
Honestly, the first thing coming to my head is something that I learned from Rich Roll, because he talked about it in more than one conversation I'd heard him have on his podcast about having a more 30,000-foot view of why I'm eating plant-based. It started off for me because I wanted to lose more weight, and I understood. I was like, this calorie density thing makes sense, and I'll avoid some oil and the sugars and that all made sense. So I started doing that. But to hear Rich talk about then as a hunter, I know how many animal screams I've heard. That I know how a rabbit sounds when it's dying. I know how a pig sounds when it's dying. I've killed a deer up close looking at it while it died. And so it felt right to me to not want to participate in that anymore. I've done it. I understand that this is a healthy way to eat. I'm not doing anything risky by avoiding meat and being soft and not wanting animals to be harmed on my behalf by strangers. And so that was the second component, right? I was like, okay, that helps a lot. But then things, like Cowspiracy come out, right? And I've always heard like, you can't be a real environmentalist if you're not a vegan. And I just thought that was like a elitist, like club, like sort of thing to say, like a, just how vegans are. And so, but when I understood better the difference, say, between um, methane and carbon monoxide, right?
Or carbon
All of this,
dioxide.
right? That's what carbon dioxide,
Yeah.
right? And so, and carbon monoxide is what's being released from cars and stuff, right? But anyway,
Yeah.
the carbon, right?
Yeah.
So when I realized all that carbon dioxide gets all the publicity, and everybody's talking about reducing CO2 and this and that, but then understanding how much more uh, potent methane is. And I was like, it just made a lot of sense to me. And then you start extrapolating, and people go, oh, well, is it just cow farts and cow burps? No, you ever been around a cow? They always, they always smell like gas, like they're farting and belching all the time. And the pasture smells like cow shit everywhere. That's the gas coming off of their poop. Like I'm a wastewater guy. I understand how these things happen. That's what I've done. And so that really resonated with me. It's like, damn, we eat so many cows that we're just disproportionately pumping this methane out into the environment that would otherwise not be a thing, right? And then you add into that the transportation. I know plenty truck drivers. I know plenty barge, like boat captains. I know all of these guys to move goods and stuff around, to move animals around. Not only do you got trucks, they got refrigeration trucks, they got all of these different things. It just felt like, wow, we've been worried about driving and taking showers instead of baths all of this time, like they talk about in Cowspiracy, when really the real thing that every person could do if they care and would make a huge difference is stop participating in that animal agriculture thing. Even if you do go out in the woods and still procure meat on your own accord, stop participating in the animal agriculture thing, please. And it's not just for the feelings of the animals and the like mass murder of sentient beings. Of course, that's bad, but it's also completely out of sync with our intake norms as a species, as an animal. It's not what we're supposed to do. And look at all of the petroleum calories that go into a calorie of beef. It's absurd. It is out of sight. We could be growing food for us to eat. Hey, we like corn, we like potatoes, we like peas, we like beans, we like shrooms. Like we could use pastures for fields to grow these plant foods. And so that is how I see um, not participating in that thing that's helping make my situation at the bottom of the boot worse. And just like that parable where it's like, oh, whatever, Josh. I mean, yeah, okay, one person. And I get it. It doesn't matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but the way I think about it is like that parable. I think it might have been you that told me about it, where there's millions of starfish on the beach, and the kid is going and just throwing one starfish at a time, and someone points out the futility in that. It's like, look at all of these freaking starfish. You're never going to make a dent. And that kid said, or what you're doing is never going to matter. And he said, it matters to this one, and it matters to this one, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I see it. Is I think that I'm just one life, but I think it matters to do it a certain way,
Yeah, well, I think it's a Margaret Mead quote, the anthropologist, something about,
Mm-hmm.
never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's what the thing is that that wording that you use, small group of a small group of considered
Committed citizens.
concerned citizen,
Yeah.
committed citizens, is basically like what running and eating healthy has helped me accumulate over the years of trying to be a better person, you know? And so, yeah, maybe I'm not going to make a difference, but maybe I can be part of threading a community along with you and my BMR buddies and a lot of some of the missing chins guys and some of the runner people that have woven themselves into my life. Like maybe that's what this is an accumulation of committed citizens. And we'll just reach a tipping point one day and things will get better.
Yeah. And, the other thing I'm thinking about is like the power you have by being an insider in your communities. And like, like one thing that's very easy for vegans to do is scold, right? Because we have
Hmm.
such moral high ground. Like, and I'm not even saying that facetiously, like it's absolutely true. Like we have moral high ground. We are compassionate. We can see things that other people can't see. And it's so easy to come
Facts is
in
facts.
as a scold. I was just reading about Dr. Semmelweis, who
Hmm.
I guess 19th century discovered that when doctors do autopsies and then don't wash their hands before delivering babies, that's not a great idea. And he discovered just wash your hands with some, fucking carbolic acid or chlorine or something, and you could save like millions of babies and their mothers. And
Yeah.
how he's treated in the history books as sort of a hero who never got, who was mistreated terribly during his lifetime, right? Like he actually ended up in an
Right.
insane asylum because he was screaming and no one would listen to him. And then when you like dig into like how did he actually convince people? Like he once wrote a 64-page article calling another physician an idiot. Right? And can you imagine, like, the doctors and researchers in the plant-based community, like doing exactly that, like writing these long
Yeah.
essays and books on like why everybody else is stupid,
Right.
and as opposed to like the way you're doing it, which is you don't scold anybody in your community for being, for hunting, for fishing, for being part of the petroleum industry, for seeking their dopamine any which way they can get it in a hard life. And
Yeah.
you're not, and you haven't divorced yourself from it. Like you can speak to this in a way, and you have spoken to this in a way that, yeah, there's a lot of people who will, their the immune system will reject you as a virus, but there's also a lot of people who can still see you as one of us.
Yeah. There's overlap. There's some people who, I'm toxic waste to, but then there's some people that go, fuck, I see you, Josh. And I get it. People tell me that. People do. So it's not on deaf ears, and regardless of whether it is or it isn't, it makes me feel good about how I'm participating in this world and whether or not I am actively doing something that's making my Louisiana worse or am I making my Louisiana better? Regardless of how difficult that is on my individual life, which one of those things is true about my actions?
Yeah.
One thing that has resonated with me as I looked at history, especially during, how racism really came to the forefront in my own psyche in the past couple years. Um, you know, uh, what was I lost my train of thought, Howard. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, where how racism has come into your psyche in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know, but I forgot where I was going, why I said that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I thought that might be a useful prompt.
Yeah, no, that was oh shit, it's bothering me. But what was it? What were we talking about before that? I'm sorry.
About being part of
You remember?
the community as opposed to just scolding.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry,
That's
Howie.
all
I
right.
lost my whole train of thought.
That's all right.
I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about now.
There's another
But
train.
it's gonna come back to me and it's gonna kill me.
Well, just
Right.
call me. We'll do some more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, I'll segue on that because you
Hmm.
know, um, like let's talk about racism, right? I mean, one of the things that
Yeah.
really impresses me about your approach to life is, and it's something I don't quite understand, honestly, when I try to apply it in my own life, is your unconditional love for your Bam Bam, for
Hmm.
your heritage, for the things, that nurtured you when you were younger, whether it's football or certain types of community or hunting or whiskey drinking or camp culture, misogyny,
Yeah.
racism. Like you love that life, the life that it gave you, and at the same time you are embodying change and you're embodying taking responsibility, and without rejecting the people whom you now see as having an extremely sort of toxic impact on both your life and the community.
I think I recognize the patterns in our culture that help sort of incubate and entrench behaviors like, and I want to empower, I want to recognize those powers, the camaraderie, the cooking, the all the tools that normal Cajun people use to try to keep people where we are, right? And yeah, it's a good place because look how good I am. Look how good we boiling crawfish again, and it's Good Friday. It's a good ball. It's a like it's
Mm.
and um, I think that using community and humor and food is a very good way to introduce and incubate old behaviors. And it's a good way to, or to incubate old behaviors, and it's a good way to introduce and incubate new behaviors. Maybe you want to try it on. Maybe it grosses you out that you hear the N word so much at that crawfish boil that you go to. Maybe you don't want to deal with that anymore. Maybe you don't see eye to eye with those people anymore. That bothers you now. Whereas used to you could just ignore it, but now I don't even want to fucking associate, you know? And knowing that that's an option, knowing that there's people that sound like you, that look like you, that can cook, that want to go, that can run a boat and back up a boat trailer, and even if they don't fish, would take you fishing and hang out for the weekend. There's a certain bit of acceptance, like, okay, you know, I can still be who I am. I can still uphold the work ethic that my grandfather taught me, the ability to fix anything on the fly and keep things rolling forward. Like I can use all of those tactics and techniques that he used to teach me some bad things, and police those behaviors as well to sort of keep them happening. Um, I could use that same model, that same scaffolding to encourage people to do better things. And I want to, I've heard so many times, Josh, why are you still there, dude? Like I met with Doms while I was coming home from Atlanta, and and we had dinner in Atlanta, and we got to talking about the hurricane, and I was telling him about the flood in May before the hurricane that we had, and it was stressful and all of that, and so we got to, got on the whole some of the political topics of late, and he's looked at me and he's like, dude, why are you still there?
Yeah.
And yeah, because it's home, like because it's I don't know, and he's from Chicago, But the thing about it is, I don't know if many other places, many other humans' homes is like disappearing actively right now as you speak. There's a certain draw for me to be here because it's like, you know, she's on her last leg.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, we just got off of these two retreats, one for health coaches and then the other a Sick to Fit retreat. And, it's hilarious us going shopping together. And I've got my little notebook with all this scribbles in it, trying to, optimize everything. And you're just walking around, chucking things into the cart there was there was such a clear sense for me that you were born for this. Like the things that you did that got you into trouble were also the things that can help so many people get out of trouble. It was so beautiful just watching. It's like, almost like Karate Kid. Like for years, you've been, without understanding why, you're wax on, wax off, paint the fence, and all of a sudden you realize that you have been training your whole life to lead experiences where people can become healthy and whole.
It felt like a camp trip. Like I've done so many of those. I've prepared, I've provisioned for and cooked for and entertained for many camp trips, and that's all that little retreat felt like. It felt like going to the camp, and I've done that many times. And to be fair, you would be proud. My Bam would walk around in the store like you. Bam did it that way, right? And he had his book in his pocket, and he'd break it out, and he would cross off panko breadcrumbs, and he'd put that back. And then we go, and now we're looking for some rice, and then we need that, right? And you were the same, but I need that too. I need that keel, and to let me run around and play with the sails,
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I loved it. It's fun, and it's fun specifically with you. Like it's fun specifically with you because especially in the kitchen, I feel competent, when I'm teaching you things, right? It's like, no, don't do that. No, you don't. Yeah. And it's like, okay. And so there's like this symbiosis there that feels less like me riding your coattails and more like me being able to actually contribute and feel like an equal and feel like a part of this thing and feel like worthy of the accolades and the beautiful things people say about me when we do these things that I'm never prepared for. And I don't know. I think there's something to it. I do love doing that. I love those weeks like that. I love those weekends. It feels really good.
Yeah, I'm feeling a theme bubbling up that even encompasses what we started talking about, which is the losing of all the land. Which is like I think there's ways that most of us look for deficits and focus on what's wrong or what's missing, even in our own lives, where you say, well, I'm still driving a truck, I'm still burning petroleum, I'm still part of this community. And the more I think about it, the more I think like those deficits are all potential strengths, right? The fact that you're still in this community means you can speak to people who wouldn't listen to me. The fact that you have this set of experiences of like totally abusing your body through food and drink means that you have all those skills that you can bring to the other. And that there's so many things that we think about, like you and I both, whenever we hear a compliment, we're like, hold on, let me write you an essay about why you're wrong. Or
Right.
let me explain to you, let me put that in context so you can see that I'm not really worthy of it. Right.
Exactly.
Right. And to like, we're not going to save whatever land we want to save. We're not going to save it out of fear and guilt. We're going to save it out of love. Right. There's nobody in the world who can argue economically that oil fields are bad. Even if you say, well, what's the carbon holding capacity of that marsh, or what's the water purification capacity of the Everglades, and how much is that? Like, we're arguing numbers. We're not going to save the world through numbers. We're going to save the world through love, right? And this is like losing down the bayou is only sad to you because of love. And I think it's so important that we get back in touch with what we love and who we love and why we love, and let that guide us, as opposed to coming from a deficit and a fear and a what's wrong perspective. And it's something I have to remind myself every day, because it's so easy for me to look around and see what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gets real heavy. Um, and I don't have a lot of solutions, I don't. And I don't want to be the guy that is just pointing at all of the problems without really having any solutions for anything. Um, I would much rather talk about what we can do. And things that we can do is try to keep our bodies and our minds and our souls intact. Um, Even though our land is melting away. Um, and I think the way to do that is to appreciate it now, love it. Who knows what could happen? Who knows what miracle could be out there?
Mm.
But in the meantime, let's just give a warm embrace, and not just to Grand Isle, which is great, but it's Grand Isle is our little for our bottom of the boot area. It's our little vacation spot. Maybe we can spread the love too. I mean, there's great places, and I'm sure the people in Pointe-au-Tremble don't want everybody in Grand Isle going over there, but it would be nice to make sure that to make sure that we patronize the smaller, more obscure places on purpose to help with the economics of surviving in this area.
Yeah, yeah. So if anyone's gonna make a purchase of pistachios or tasers,
Yes, tasers.
I know a place that can get you a deal.
Or welding caps.
Welding cap.
Yeah. Yeah, you need some.
Yeah. Should we announce a retreat to Grand Isle? Do you want to put that together for the fall?
Hey, that would be amazing. Some marsh, Grand Isle, Cocodrie, do large. I know people with camps. We could figure something out, bro.
If anyone,
that would be
yeah.
That could.
So what would be a good month for that? Like probably after hurricane season. Let's not roll the dice too much.
Yeah, it's tricky, but in the fall, we still got some warm days in the fall. So probably in October-ish, early October-ish.
Okay.
Would be a good thing.
All right, let's if anyone's listening and wants to do like a 4-day, like Thursday to Sunday camping and
yeah, that would, and we could do the kayaks because we'd be close enough. I could haul a bunch, and that would be nice to do like marsh exploration and kayaks and teach people about brulots.
And we'll do mushroom fries instead of fish fries. Mushroom air fries. Bro. So no oil, no fish.
Mushroom air fries. Yeah, champignon in the air fryer. That's gonna be fire.
All right. Yeah, let's.
We're gonna put a crack on that. Put that on a cracker, dude. You don't get it, but other people will.
All right.
TikTok.
Okay.
There's a famous dude on TikTok from Thibodeau, right? He's a cook, right? And he says everything. Put that on a cracker, dude.
I have not given into TikTok yet.
Don't do it.
Yeah. I don't have that much free time.
Right.
So, anything else before we close?
No, brother, not much. I really appreciate, you know, you talking with me, and especially about this topic. I didn't really realize that's what we were going to talk about, but it felt useful, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
It means a lot to me, man.
yeah, I wanted to. I mean, it's a conversation that we had for many hours in the car, and it's not going to
Yeah,
have the same impact for someone who wasn't in the car with us, but
yeah,
maybe it'll help somebody go down there, and they can see for themselves,
yeah.
and maybe we can guide people to kind of
Correct.
show them what's up.
Agreed.
Yeah.
There's viral things happen now, and maybe people do stupid things to go viral. Maybe something beautiful could happen, with virality eventually.
Mm,
We'll see.
yeah. Uh, yeah, let's talk again soon, because I also want to talk to you about your new relationship to running.
Let's do
So
it.
it will
Let's do it.
next few weeks we'll do another one.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
All right, brother.
Love it.
L-
Peace, my
Peace.
man.
Talk to you later. All right. I hope you liked that. If you want to check out some of the links, you can check out the show notes for today's show, which is plantyourself.com/511. Plantyourself.com/511. So what's going on around here? I've been away for like pretty much 2 weeks. Well, I was home for the retreats, but I wasn't really home. I was just focused on the retreats. So mowed the lawn, mowed the backyard. I'm not sure if that's movement or garden. The blueberries are now in flower. They were in bud last week. Now they're in flower. And tonight's the first night of Passover, so we're going to dig up some horseradish for the Seder plate, which is kind of exciting. We also have some Gold's horseradish, the red stuff, or the purple stuff with beet in there. But we can get some fresh from the garden as well. And there's a whole bunch of bulbs to be planted, and the greenhouse is getting to the point where it's too hot during the day now, so we got to keep the door and window open, and a bunch of flats. A lot of flowers and herbs going to get planted for this summer. Movement news, specifically last week I was down in New Orleans for the Fire on the Bayou Ultimate Frisbee Tournament, and we did great. We came in third overall, and we played really well, and we had a lot of fun as a team, and I did a lot of running. So I haven't done anything since Sunday, since the final game. I have just been recuperating and hope to play again this weekend and then get back into the groove. We've got probably going to be invited to Nationals in Denver some weekend in July, and so that's the next event. All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, the Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Melissa Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Tina Scharf, Tina Ahern, Jen Filkinovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious Michelle X, Elsbeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Kelly Cameron, Janet Selby, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Benham, Gila Sert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesner, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Val Linneman, Nick Harper, Bandana Charlie, Molly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Scharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayat, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzinwa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Olakoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Marani, Karen and Joe Crabtree, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Peter W. Evans, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Lori Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Emily Iconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Leenan, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bilberry Elf, Marjorie Lewis, Tricia Adams, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagan, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paranganchi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Naik, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, Michael Lushton, Sarah Johnson, Catherine Floyd, for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.